I'm always quite surprised by how fearful people are to use higher ISOs. Now, the ISO, obviously the sensitivity of your sensor. Nowadays, you've got cameras which can go up to 1 billion ISO. Okay, was it the Nikon D4 can go into an H3 level, or maybe it's an H4 level, which can do 200,000 ISO. Huge. And ridiculous. I don't think you ever really want to use that one. But I was quite surprised the other day when I did. There's this video of a photographer who is just an idiot at a wedding, and he's going up to the bride and groom, away from the back of the room, to the side, over their heads while they're putting the rings on and all that kind of stuff, and just acting like an absolute tool that you just wouldn't want at the ceremony. And he's using flash all the time. He's got a big Gary Fong lens condom, wherever it is, on top of his flash, and he just, what a tool. And there's 2 of them as well. Anyway, so somebody says, you know, should you really be using that much flash when in a ceremony for a wedding? And generally the case is in the UK, if you're inside a church, or even not even just a church, but just during the ceremony, it's usually like no, don't use flash, because it's just annoying, it's distracting, and it's disrupting. On top of the fact that you're going to be a photographer going around with this thing going click, 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 click. Maybe not as much as that, but people will be trying to listen, especially if it's a place where you don't have a microphone or something. People will be listening, what's the vows they're saying there? And you have somebody at the side going click, and it gets louder and louder the more you do it, and the more people really notice you doing it. So you've got that, and then if you're a photographer that has like an autofocus confirmation beep, and then if you're using flash, you've got the flash recycle notification beep as well. So you go beep. That would just annoy so many people. It'd be unreal. Anyway, so generally over here is like, don't use flash during the wedding. You know, if it's in the party afterwards where there's noise, there's music, there's people chatting away, all that stuff, absolutely fine. But during the ceremony, when it's all meant to be focused on the bride and groom, and you don't want like a bloody strobe disco going on at the side from the photographer using flash all the time, don't use flash. Now, for me, in certain wedding venues I've been at, that's meant, oh my god, it's going to be some dark photos. I've had to use definitely my primes. I've never really gone down to f1.4 for any of the ceremony shots, just because then the depth of field is so shallow that if I'm trying to get a shot of the couple, it ends up just being maybe the bride and then the groom's just kind of ever so slightly, as well as they're just a little bit blurry, that just kind of makes it look like it wasn't quite right. If it's totally like they're total blurred out, obviously it looks intended, but if it's like they're just out of focus because the depth of field was so narrow, blah blah, it's just a nightmare. So I don't usually shoot at f1.4. Normally the shallowest I go down to would be an f2. However, it depending on the kind of situation, the length of lens, and the distance from the couple. So that's a different story there. But I, with my D700, can quite happily shoot at ISO 3200, and normally if I'm shooting handheld, I can happily go down to maybe a 50th of a second, even if I'm like a 70mm. So if I'm using my Tamron 24-70, 70mm, especially if I've got the VC on, happily shoot at 50th of a second, no problem there. And because they're usually standing and they're still, you don't need to worry about their body. It's not like a sports shot where they're going to be jumping around and moving. It's usually them standing, and the only movement would be the small movements of the lips from the priest or minister or celebrant, whoever it is, or person from the council, whatever. So yeah, usually around about 50th of seconds, then I just work the ISO and I go as wide an aperture as I can, maybe an f2, maybe not less than that. I, with my camera, the Nikon D700, shooting at 3200 is a no-brainer. It's a piece of cake. The images come out on my full screen and I kind of go, brilliant, I must have shot this with no noise or with noise reduction on or something. And again, with the RAW files, all the noise is there in the RAW files, but with that camera, it's just like, oh, so good. And the thing is, pretty much so many other cameras can do that now as well. Even like your not bog standard, but your entry level digital SLRs now, which are coming out with stuff like 24 megapixel cameras, I would say you're pretty comfortable shooting at ISO 3200, or is it 3200, no problem. So when I had a comment on the page saying, oh, you know, I would go up to ISO 1600, but normally with my entry level camera I wouldn't go above ISO 800. I'm like, really? I have never had a photo yet where somebody has said, oh, I really noticed the noise. The amount of noise reduction that you get either in camera if you're shooting JPEG, or additional noise reduction which you can do on the files when you're editing them in Lightroom, you can take out so much noise. And usually the worst one is color noise, and that's the easiest one to take away, it seems, as well. The rest is just grain, and then once at the time you've compressed it down to whatever it is, and then by the time it's printed out onto a book or into a picture, noise is pretty much non-existent whatsoever. So for me, I would say if you've got a camera which is shooting 20 megapixels plus, and it is a modern camera, like built from 2013 onwards with the sensors that we've got just now, and just shooting JPEG, I would say if you're in a wedding and it's a dark situation, happily go up to ISO 3200, or as the Americans would call 3200. If you've got a bigger camera like the Canon 5D Mark III or the Nikon D800 or 600 as well, I would say do not fear ISO 6400. It's a happy place to go to, and if it means the difference of getting a shot or not getting a shot or having a blurry shot, then always go for getting the shot, because you can people are much more forgiving of a little bit of a noise and a little bit of grain to an image than they are compared to a blurry image or a totally guffly exposed image. So I would say everyone, if at weddings, if at concerts, I think somebody else did who was it? Matt Granger put up a video the other day saying, oh, never shoot high ISO. He didn't. He did something, I can't remember. I'll do a specific video reply to that. But I'm saying no, happily shoot at a high, super high ISO, because A, if you're not the actual wedding photographer, your images aren't really that important, and B, the amount of compression and editing which you can do to your images mean that pretty much the max ISOs you can put your cameras to nowadays isn't really going to damage your image quality that much. Granted, if you're like totally printing off on a massive image and you need the most dynamic range and you need the most color accuracy and all that kind of stuff, yes, but to the average person that'll be viewing the images on Facebook or in a, was it an 8x6 photo piece of paper, no one's gonna know, no one's gonna care, and no one's gonna go, oh, high ISO, terrible. Anyway, that's just my rant for today. Hope that helps. Bye-bye.